I didn't do that before. All right. So let's start. We're in class 38 on Bible prophecy about Israel, the book of Revelation. And not many people think of the book of Revelation as being prophecy about Israel. But if you believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, as most Bible-believing Christians do, then who's still on earth is Israel and not the church. So the book of Revelation is mostly about Israel and the Gentiles. Okay, so let's start with a review after we took a several-week break. So Monica, can you read Genesis 3:15, please?
Okay. And I will put empty between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his head.
Very good. So between thee, so two E's in a row, it's a nice open E. So between thee and the woman. Okay. And we've repeated this so often, I don't think we need to go to the Portuguese. But Emily, can you read question 1?
How do modern Bibles mistranslate God's word in this famous verse?
Okay, so who remembers which very important word do modern Bibles change or corrupt?
Instead of seed is the descendant, I think.
Absolutely right. So they use descendant, which is not incorrect, but it's just a very narrow definition, whereas seed is a much more pregnant definition. All right, it gives us much more information than descendant. And so let's go to Jude. Can you read question 2?
The word seed represents what over time?
Okay, so here we are. Remember, we're back in the Garden of Eden, and God is speaking to the serpent. And so when he mentions thy seed or the woman's seed, who does that represent over time? So back then or soon after, who did thy seed represent? Any thoughts? Well, so remember, it just also means descendant. Okay, so it means that, Eve's and Adam's descendants are part of the seed. Not very long, after. The important part of everyone is descended from Adam and Eve, right? But then there was a special group, a chosen people, and that was Israel. So then, okay, so we're now talking about a war between the serpent's seed and the woman's seed, and the woman's seed is Israel, correct? Then even more specifically, there's one important seed from that descended from Eve and Adam, and that is Christ, right? So because people believe, Bible scholars believe, then when it says bruise thy head, that it's talking about the head of Jesus Christ. So one of the seed. And then finally, the seed of the woman today might be called who? Us, the church. Okay, so in a sense, it's God's people, and most importantly, in this lineage, because we're all descendants of Jesus Christ spiritually. And Christ is the linchpin. So let's go now. Monica, can you read question 3?
Okay. The war against the woman and her seed has manifested itself throughout history, which what major trend?
Okay, very good. So we're reviewing what we looked at several weeks ago, so it's a little hard to remember. But what is the major trend in history that the war against the woman and her seed has, how do you say, has blossomed throughout history all the time and is becoming stronger and stronger this year even.
Wars against Israel.
Exactly. So wars against Israel, and then to make it more broad, because remember, Israel was reborn after 2,000 years. So in that physical country of Israel didn't exist from 70 AD until 1948 AD.
Oh, yeah.
Anti-Semitism.
Semitism.
Okay, so the war against the seed, the woman and her seed, has been nonstop anti-Semitism. And you might have heard in the news with the new Israel and Palestinian war, right? Because the moment that they got rid of Trump, now we're back in big trouble, deep trouble in the Middle East. The US is favoring Iran, and Iran supplies, again, wants a big treaty with Iran. Iran gives money, so the Palestinians and Hamas feel emboldened, and they attacked Israel. And now, for the first time on the streets of major cities in the US, thugs, gangs are going around, and they go to people sitting at restaurants and say, "Are you Jewish? Tell me who's Jewish here." All right, because they want to beat up on Jews. And this never happened before on American streets. It now happens. And the people in power, the Democrat Party, no problem. They hardly say a thing, okay? Because they now have some radical jihadists inside the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party is becoming rapidly anti-Semitic. So there are many, many verses in the Bible which tell us about this incredibly sad trend. But let's start with Deuteronomy 28:33. And so, Emily, can you read that, please?
The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed away.
Okay, so the Jewish people, they were warned. They were warned if they did not follow God, and if they did not follow the Messiah, things would be difficult for them. So in one sense, anti-Semitism is punishment. They're God's chosen people. He will always protect them from ultimate destruction, but they are also under his judgment for being rebellious. So who has that in Portuguese, please? Oh, I do. O fruto da tua terra e todo o teu trabalho comerá povo que nunca conheceste, e tu serás oprimido e quebrantado todos os dias. Remember, please correct my Portuguese.
It was
Okay.
great. It was great.
Oh, you're too kind. Thank you. So let's go on. Ju, can you read Revelation 13:1?
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
Very good. There's one word there. The pronunciation is a little bit, instead of upon, it's upon. So, and I always say English often has the pronunciation up front. In this case, no. So it's the emphasis is on the second half of the word, upon. Very good. And who has that in Portuguese, please?
Vi emergir do mar uma besta que tinha 10 chifres e 7 cabeças, e sobre os chifres 10 diademas, e sobre as cabeças nomes de blasfêmia.
Okay, so imagine the horror of Apostle John receiving this image of this horrible image of the beast rise up out of the sea. I mean, this is terrifying. And so the question naturally is, and that question would be, who just read was, so Monica, can you read question 4?
Who is the beast?
Okay, so who remembers?
The Antichrist? No.
Correct. All right, so it's not the dragon, and we know that because we'll get to it again, but verse 4 clarifies it for us. So the Bible often, the context or several verses before or after makes things clear. Okay, so it's the Antichrist who is the beast. Okay, and so Emily, can you read Revelation 13:2, please?
And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as a mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority.
Beautiful. And who has that in Portuguese, please?
A besta que vi era semelhante a leopardo, mas tinha como pés como os de urso e boca como a de leão. O dragão deu à besta o seu poder, o seu trono e grande autoridade.
Okay, so again, this is a very scary chapter, and we're reviewing, but we're going slowly in the review, so verse by verse. So let's look now. Ju, can you read question 5, please?
Where previously, do we see a similar multi-animal image?
A multi-image, animal image.
Multi.
Very good. Okay, so what do you remember? This is a very strange image, but it's not the first time in the Bible. We have strange multi-animal images elsewhere in the Bible. Who remembers one of the most famous? What book? What chapter? You can see I gave you the chapter actually in the next quote, but I masked the book. But the first word tells it. So Daniel 7. Okay, so you see, so sometimes I make it very easy. I should disguise things more. So Ju, can you read Daniel 7, or did you just read?
Yeah.
So Monica, can you please read Daniel 7 verses 2 to 3?
Okay. Daniel speak and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens trod upon the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, the verse on from another.
Okay, one from another. And the second word after Daniel, it's in classic English. Now we would say spoke, but this is then spake. So Daniel spake. It's not used today, but remember when you see that silent E at the end of a word, then the vowel before the consonant is an open. So it's not spake, spak, or it's spake.
Okay,
So
so
who has Daniel 7, 2 to 3 in Portuguese, please?
Falou Daniel e disse, 2, 3. Eu estava olhando durante a minha visão da noite, e eis que os 4 ventos do céu agitavam o mar grande. 4 animais grandes diferentes, uns dos outros subiam do mar.
Okay, so there we are. So this is so John's vision after he was taken up to heaven in a picture of the rapture. John was taken up to heaven to see all these images. So history in the future, prophecies before his eyes. And what he saw was very similar to Daniel 7. So let's look. Emily, can you read question 6, please?
What did these animals represent?
Okay, so now we know from Daniel 7 that these animals represented something. Do you remember? Did they represent people? Did they represent places? What do you think?
Place?
Yes, but specifically, they represented empires. Okay, so we know that back in Daniel 7, that the lion represented Babylon. Because where was Daniel? Daniel, of course, was in exile in Babylon, reporting to King Nebuchadnezzar. And so the lion, the powerful first beast, is the current empire of the world, Babylon, under Nebuchadnezzar. And this is a prophecy, because he clarified when he interprets the dream. He says, this is, things that the lion represents things now, the bear, what's called Media Persia, which is now Iran, and the leopard, Greece. Okay, so it was a prophecy, because no one knew. Daniel was in the time of Babylon. No one knew that Media Persia would be the next empire, and immediately after that would be Greece. Okay, but let's look now. So, Ju, can you read question 7?
What other famous dream image does this remind you of?
Okay, so one thing I think you can't give a Rio de Janeiro pronunciation of the R. You have to give a so that third to last word that starts with an R is remind.
Remind.
Exactly. Okay.
That's what Guta all the time.
And you know why, Ju? Because you live on a beautiful beach, so you're becoming carioca. The carioca in you is coming out.
Carioca, gauchês carioca.
Okay, so so this image of this animal coming out of the sea, same kind, or animals coming out of the sea, similar to John's later vision, but now it's also reflecting and echoing something else, another image. Who remembers? There's an earlier image where the empires are represented. There's an earlier image where the empires are not represented by animals, but by something else. Does anyone remember?
Statue.
Sorry?
A statue.
Exactly right, Emily. Okay, so we have the verse down below, and it's Daniel, so it's before, but it's Daniel 2, 32 to 33. So did I jump? Did you read that? Oh, and Monica, can you read Daniel 2, 32 to 33, please?
This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay.
Okay. And the other is his thighs of brass.
Thighs.
And that's kind of, it's an irregular word, because there you have a GH after, and who knows that the I would be an open one, but it's thighs of brass. Okay, so this is the famous statue made of different parts of metal. And here is, unfortunately, I don't have a very good picture of this. It's too small, but there it is. Okay, so the head of gold. And again, this is interpreted earlier that, okay, the head of gold is Babylon. The breasts and arms of silver are Media, Persia. The belly and thighs are brass or Greece. Who remembers what the legs are?
The Roman Empire.
Absolutely right. And remember, this is incredible, incredible prophecy, because no one knew that Rome would become the main empire back in the time of Daniel. This is 500 years before that happened. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that the empire is represented by two legs. Why? Because the Roman Empire divided. Okay, so Daniel's dream took on an extra significance. I'm sorry, so who has Daniel 2:32, 33 in Portuguese, please?
A cabeça da estátua. I'm sorry. A cabeça da estátua era feita de ouro puro. O peito e o braço eram de prata. O ventre e os quadris eram de bronze. As pernas eram de ferro e os pés eram em parte de ferro e em parte de barro.
Okay, thank you. So Ju, can you continue and read question 8 for us, please?
The two legs represent what empire?
Okay, so oops, I think I already gave that away. So it was Rome, or the Roman Empire. And when did that happen? When Rome was separated from Constantinople. And Constantinople today is known as Istanbul in Turkey. Well, that divided in 285 AD. So last question to review, I thought I'd put it, and I think I skipped Emily. Emily, can you read question 9, please?
With horns representing authority or kingdom, why 10?
Okay, so we already spoke about how horns often represent authority and kingdoms. So why 10? Any thoughts? And I'm asking this question a second time because I think I came up with a better answer than last time.
Is this part that it could be the European Union?
Yeah, and so we think eventually we're talking about 10 kingdoms, and maybe it starts out as different parts of the European Union. Maybe it becomes 10 different divisions, regions of the whole world. But here's the other thing. 10 because looking at the statue from Nebuchadnezzar's dream, how many toes does it have?
10.
10 toes. Okay, so there we are. We have the Roman Empire, and it's the revived Roman Empire, which we know from Daniel 9. We believe from Daniel 9, the Antichrist will come from a revived Roman Empire. And oh, there it is. The revived Roman Empire is represented by the 10 toes. Okay, so wow. You see how the Bible is like, yeah. You can't escape it, that it's supernatural. No man or group of men over 1,600 years, 3 continents, most of whom never spoke to each other, write something that fits together perfectly. Okay, so let's move on. So we're going to do some, we're not going very quickly, but let's go to Monica. Can you read Revelation 13:3, please?
And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast.
Okay, thank you. So, and who has that in Portuguese, please?
13:3.
Então vi uma de suas cabeças como golpeada de morte, mas essa ferida mortal foi curada, e toda a terra se maravilhou, seguindo a besta.
Okay, so interesting because the King James translation is a little bit different. We'll see why it might be important. So Emily, can you read question A?
What does this imply about the Antichrist?
Okay, so here we are. So we're talking about the beast, which overall is the Antichrist. But now we get into there's these 7 heads, and one of them, maybe the most important, we'll see, as it were, wounded to death. What does, and then his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. So this verse is showing us that the main head it's talking about is the beast, right? Because all the world wondered after the beast. So it's the Antichrist. But what does this imply about the Antichrist? Something strange and different. What do you think? Well, what happens to him in this verse, you think?
Can it be related to Genesis? No. When it talks about bruising the...
That's absolutely right. So it is related back to Genesis 3:15, which was the first verse of the evening. Very good. So it's like wounding the heel or the head. That's really good. But so it's a reflection of that, even though Genesis 3:15, Genesis 3:15 is it when talking about serpent's seed is Satan's seed. Includes the Antichrist. So okay, but what does it seem to say? It wounded to death. And actually, you know, the Portuguese is here in the Alameda Corrido Fiel. I was wrong. I think they're similar. It's similar to the King James, because here it says in English, as it were wounded. It doesn't say actually wounded to death. But the impression here was that the Antichrist is killed, and then it says his deadly wound was healed, meaning that, and then all the world wondered after the beast. It looks like he was resurrected. So remember, Antichrist is a substitute for Christ. He comes as the Messiah. The Jews believe that he is the Messiah they've been waiting for. And so he is doing things, and so here he is, he even though the Jews didn't believe in the actual Messiah, the Antichrist is looking as though he goes through a death and resurrection. But, and in the ACF, it does say similarly, as though, and here as it were, because so it looks as though as it were wounded to death. Because the question is, does Satan actually have the ability to create life out of death?
No.
I don't think so. Okay, so that's why it looks as though the Antichrist died. It looks as though he's resurrected. And then the people are wondering after him. Okay, so this is like, wow. The world looks at this and go, this guy is special. So, Jude, can you read 13:4, please?
13:4. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?
Okay, in this case, the emphasis is so worshipped the dragon. And
Worship.
Worshipped the beast.
Worship.
Very good. And who has that in Portuguese, please? E adoraram o dragão que deu à besta o seu poder. E adoraram a besta, dizendo, quem é semelhante à besta? Quem poderá batalhar contra ele? Okay, so then that brings us the natural question. Monica, can you read question B, please?
What words people decide about the Antichrist?
Okay, so look at that. They say, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? So what do they decide about the Antichrist?
That no one can kill.
Exactly right. It's like, why even think of fighting him? He's like all powerful. It's like he came back from the dead. He can't be killed, and so forget about it. He can't be defeated. So even if we wanted to rebel against this ruler, this dictator of the world, no chance. Okay, so that's part of Satan's plan. It's how he gets a lot of people on earth deceived. They think, wow, that guy is so powerful, I want to follow him. Okay, so Emily, can you read Revelation 13:5?
And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months.
Okay, thank you. So you see, we're going verse by verse, but it's very important. So who has that in Portuguese, please?
Foi-lhe dada uma boca que proferia arrogâncias e blasfêmias e autoridade para agir 42 meses.
Okay, thank you. And so, Emily, what did you just read? So then yeah, you're right. So Ju, can you read question C, please?
I think it's Monica now,
No,
because
Okay.
I would.
Okay. Well, but Emily just did read Revelation 13:5, right?
Yeah.
Okay, then it is you, because in you come after Emily.
Okay.
So question C, please.
At what important point were we in the tribulation? Why important?
Okay, so what do you think? Where are we in the tribulation? And how do we know? And why was it in such an important point? So the Bible defines halfway in the tribulation many different ways. Okay, sometimes it's like 1,250 days. Other times it says 42 months. Other times it says 3.5 years, or a time and a time times and division of time. A strange way of saying 3.5. Okay, so we're at the midpoint, right? Because 42 months seems to say, okay, if the Antichrist has a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given to him, that Satan gave to the Antichrist to continue 42 months, that's for the second half. It's during the Great Tribulation. But what else happens at the midpoint?
The Antichrist is revealed.
Okay. Well, revealed in what way?
Oh, they realize that he's not the Antichrist.
Yeah, absolutely right. Because remember,
This must be.
yeah, when we say the Antichrist is revealed, normally we think of it, well, people say, is Barack Obama the Antichrist? Is that going to be revealed? Is it the Secretary General of the United Nations? So it's like to be the Antichrist cannot be revealed while we are on Earth, right? So only after the rapture.
Okay.
And so he'll be revealed. Not people won't. You see what I'm saying? They won't know he's like the bad Antichrist. They'll think that he's the Messiah, but he will be revealed. So we'll be up there in heaven and go, oh, it was him. Okay, but you're right. At the midpoint, it's worse. It's that the Antichrist, it's like he rips off the mask, and he does what? Well, here it is. And now, Monica, can you read 2 Thessalonians 2:4?
Who opposed and exalted himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he has got seated in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God.
Oh, wow, how scary. Who has that very important verse in Portuguese, please?
O qual se opõe e se levanta contra tudo que se chama Deus, ou é objeto de culto, a ponto de assentar-se no santuário de Deus, ostentando-se como se fosse o próprio Deus.
Okay, so there it is. So this is the Antichrist at the midpoint, we believe. He exalts himself above all that is called God and is worshipped, and that he now sits as though he is God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Ouch. Okay, so, and then Emily, can you read question D?
What does Jesus call the above moment?
Okay, so there's a name for this midpoint, this horrible moment when the Antichrist rips off the mask, and all of a sudden people realize, uh-oh, what have we done?
Is it the abomination of desolation?
Absolutely right, and that's the right order also, abomination of desolation, and there it is. And so, Jude, can you read Matthew 24, 15, 16, please?
When we therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoke of Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, whose reader let him understand. Then let them which be in the Judea flee into the mountains.
Okay, very well read. When ye, though, so ye, that strange word, but a nice one.
Okay.
And just remind you, see, when it says, whoso readeth, let him understand, you see at the end of understand, colon, parentheses, it is not a smiley face, okay? Okay, this was written by like the Holy Spirit, Matthew, so we're talking almost 2,000 years ago, all right? The King James translation was 1611, but smiley faces did not exist then, and this was not intended to be a smiley face, okay? Now in English, you do not normally put the colon before the parentheses. So you don't see this in good English, but this is correct. This is God's word. So who has this in Portuguese, please?
Quando, pois, virdes o abominável da desolação de que falou o profeta Daniel, no lugar santo, quem lê entenda, então os que estiverem na Judéia fujam para os montes.
Okay, so as we can see, what happens is that the Jews, they realize their mistake. They thought the Antichrist was the Messiah, and now they realize, ouch, we made a big mistake, and they are warned. Sorry?
Is Jesus talking?
Absolutely right. And so he's saying, and so let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Okay, so he warns elsewhere, you know, don't delay, immediately flee, because your life now is entirely at risk, because the Antichrist will try to kill all of you. So it's like Hitler on steroids. Okay, so let's go, that was Jew. So Monica, can you read question E, please?
Which chapter and verse of Daniel is Jesus referring to?
Very good, referring to. So who remembers, right? So this is a big prophecy chapter in Daniel, but who remembers this famous verse that Jesus is referring to? All right, it's Daniel, but Daniel, it's 9. And then 927, because 927 is the chapter which gives us this incredible concept that the tribulation week of years, or 7-year tribulation period, there's a covenant which the Antichrist makes between the Jews and the Arabs. And so we go, oh, okay. So let's read then Daniel 9:27, and that would be Emily.
And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured into the desolate.
Wow, okay. And this is a very fascinating verse, because remember, he's saying, shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation, or praying, to cease. That means that in the temple, this is one of the hints that when the temple is put back on, where the Temple Mount is, where the Muslim building is that just caused the new Palestine-Israel war, right? It always starts on Temple Mount, so that the third temple will be built there. And what happens when they actually have a temple again in Jerusalem? Well, the Jews will return to the sacrificial system. So this implies that there will be animal sacrifices again, because for nearly 2,000 years, the Jews have had no way to expiate sin. Emily.
Do you know why did they stop making sacrifices?
Stop making sacrifices?
Yeah.
They don't have a temple. Because remember, they were only allowed. Yeah, remember there was one of the problems when Judea and Israel, or North Israel, this northern tribe separated from the southern, in that they're like, this was only supposed to happen in the temple in Jerusalem. Okay, and the North tribes were like, Jerusalem's too far away. We're going to do this in Samaria. We're going to have our own temple and our own sacrificial system, because we want that. It's like too much fun. Okay, but according to the Bible, no, it's only at the temple in Jerusalem. So they've been without a temple all this time. That's what they're now making plans to help the Antichrist rebuild the temple. They think it'll be the Messiah who helps them rebuild the temple. So, scary. Okay, and now there's one other. Oh, I'm sorry. Who has Daniel 9:27 in Portuguese, please? It's such an important verse. Anyone faster than me? I'm very slow right now.
Ele fará firme aliança com muitos. Por 1 semana, na metade da semana, fará cessar o sacrifício e a oferta de manjares. Sobre a asa das abominações virá o assolador, até que a destruição que está determinada se derrame sobre ele.
Okay, and this is the main verse that Jesus is referring to, but there's another one, and let's go, and there it is right there in Daniel 12:11. So towards the end of Daniel's book, and so Emily, so Ju, can you read Daniel 12:11, please?
And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination demarked, desolation set up, there shall be 1,209 days.
Okay. Very good. And so abomination that maketh desolate set up.
Maketh.
Very good.
Maketh.
Okay, so here Daniel's telling us that actually the daily sacrifice shall be taken away. So there it's repeated that when the Antichrist says, I am God, it's now, there's no more sacrificial system of animals. It's now worship me. So who has that in Portuguese, please?
Depois do tempo em que o sacrifício diário for tirado e posta abominação desoladora, haverá ainda 1290 dias.
Okay, and then Monica, if you can continue by reading question F.
Okay. A comparison of these two Daniel verses confirms what convention.
Okay, so comparison, like the verb, yeah, to compare, and then this is the noun, so comparison.
Comparison, okay.
Oh, so what do you think? This is like, whoa, why did we just read those two verses, which are a little bit repetitive by Daniel? But what do you know? Wait a second. What do you think? All right, look at the time. What, Emily?
Convention is like a covenant.
Well, no, because they're a similar root, but they are different, because a covenant is something that you negotiate and settle between two parties, a covenant. A convention is like a habit. It's like this is what we always do. This is what is believed.
Okay.
It's like it's taken up, but it's not necessarily negotiated. So, but the convention I'm talking about is about time periods. So there's what's the difference in time periods between Daniel 9:27 and 12:11? Well, in Daniel 9:27, he mentions just 1 week. And in the middle of the week. Now, if you took that literally, 1 week is 7 days. But then you look at Daniel 12:11, and there it is. And remember, it says in the midst of the week, so we know that this is half of a week. And then in Daniel 12:11, he says, okay, this is we're in the middle here, right? When the daily sacrifice is taken away. And from that day, there shall be 1,290 days. That doesn't sound like 3.5 days any longer, does it?
I didn't understand really well, sorry.
I know, okay, so thank you for Daniel 9:27, Daniel is talking about a week.
Okay.
The convention that I've told you repeatedly, but now we have the proof. The convention is that's not a literal week of just 7 days, it's a week of years.
Oh, okay.
All right, so it's 7 years. But don't take my word for it. Take God's word for it. Because Daniel 9:27, we're talking about in the middle of a week in Daniel 9:27, and then Daniel 12:11. Wait a second. From that midpoint to the end is 1,290 days. How many months is that? That's 42 months, right? Or 3.5 years. Okay, so all of a sudden, Daniel just showed us that the Great Tribulation period is 3.5 years. And so in Daniel 9, it means that a week represents a week of years, 7 years. Okay, so there you are. There's the, it's not that man created this convention, that the Daniel's week of, remember, it's Daniel's 70 weeks is the vision that we've studied before. Well, now we know why it's called Daniel's 70 weeks of years. Because, okay, because this is the tribulation period is not just a week, it's 7 years. So it's a week of years. Okay, so I was happy about that. Oh, okay. Oh, I see why people say that. Okay, so we're going a little late. So Emily, can you read Revelation 13:5?
And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven.
Okay, so this Antichrist is really a piece of work, as we say in English. That's slang. That's like for like a really crazy guy. So who has that in Portuguese, please?
Foi-lhe dada uma boca que proferia arrogâncias e blasfêmias, e autoridade para agir 42 meses.
Oh, I'm sorry. Revelation 13:5.
Eu já li isso.
Oh, then maybe what did I get wrong? In the open. No, I'm partly dyslexic, and so I mess up numbers. He opened his mouth, so this is no longer. And then we're given, oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. To classify and dwell in heaven. Is that the next? Oh, that was 6.
Number 6.
Yeah. Okay. So can you 13:6 in Portuguese, please?
Ah, ok. E abriu a boca em blasfêmias contra Deus, para lhe difamar o nome e difamar o tabernáculo, a saber, os que habitam no céu.
Okay, which makes sense because the last verse we read was Revelation 13:5. So thank you. So, Ju, can you read question G, please?
G.
Yes.
Who could them that dwell in heaven be?
Okay, so the Antichrist, he's blaspheming against God, against his name, his tabernacle, and then that dwell in heaven. Who's dwelling in heaven?
Us.
Absolutely. Okay, so just to show you, the Antichrist hasn't forgotten about us. Okay, it's like those horrible Christians, those horrible Bible-believing Christians, followers of Jesus Christ, and they made life so difficult for Satan that they could like tell Satan to flee, that Satan had no power over them. And so Antichrist has not forgotten us. We're out of sight, but not out of mind. Okay, we're up in heaven and he is still angry at us.
Oh,
Okay, all right, exactly. So this is excellent news. The Antichrist is really mad about us. Okay, so and let's make him madder still. Okay, so let's keep up the work. All right, so now that was then. So Emily, Ju. So Monica, can you read Revelation 13? Did I get all? Yeah, so it must be 13:7.
Okay. And it was given unto him to make war which descends, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations.
Okay, thank you. So who has that in Portuguese, please?
number 7.
Yes, 13:7.
Pode ler, Ju.
Foi-lhe dado poder para guerrear contra os santos e vencê-los. Foi-lhe dada autoridade sobre toda tribo, povo, língua e nação.
Okay, so Emily, can you read question H, please?
Who are these saints?
Okay, so why do I ask? Because, well, saints, well, who do you think?
The people who accepted Jesus in the tribulation.
Yep. And another way to put it is it's Israel. Or rather, it's converted Israel. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
And why I ask is simply because, first of all, we know the Catholic Church uses the word saints incorrectly, right? Because if you read your Bible, saints are not someone who's been elevated by a pope and they're beatified and then they've been dead and now they're like these high heavenly angel-like people in heaven. No, the Bible clearly says that anyone who believes in him is a saint. So his saints, we are his saints. So in this case, though, some people get confused by this because they're like, well, no, that's us. We're down there and that's the church and whatnot. No. And how do we know that? Let's go to question I, which then would be Ju, please.
Why can they not be the church?
Okay, so what do you think? Why is it impossible for Revelation 13:7 to be about the church?
Because we're up in heaven.
Okay, so we're physically not there, but there's another good reason why it's also, don't even think about it, Antichrist or Satan. You're powerless in this area. Well, here it is in Matthew 16:8 as a, so Monica, can you read Matthew 16:8 as a wonderful reassurance, encouragement?
And I say also unto thee, that thou art Peter, and upon this rock, and I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it.
Prevail against the prevail.
Prevail.
Okay, so I'm going to read that for us. E também eu te digo que tu és Pedro, e sobre esta pedra edificarei a minha igreja, e as portas do inferno não prevalecerão contra ela. So we know that this is another verse which is misinterpreted by the Catholic Church. So it's not that Peter was the rock, and they use this to say that Peter was the first pope. Very strange, and they only started saying this, I believe, in the 18th century. So it's a recent Catholic distortion. But upon this rock, Jesus, the name Peter in Greek, I think, is actually like a small stone. But the rock everywhere else in the Bible is a big rock, and it refers to who?
Jesus.
Jesus, exactly right. So upon this rock, so the church is built upon Christ. So Christ is saying, I will build my church on this rock. He's being modest. He doesn't say upon me.
So the sense the people is gonna be the people is gonna be only Jewish people.
No, this is talking about the church.
Ah, okay, no,
Okay.
but the sense is gonna they believe during the tribulation.
Well, so Matthew 16:18 is Jesus speaking to Peter back during the time of the apostles. So we're no longer in the tribulation period. Okay, so there's no confusion that this is talking about Israel. But why I put it here is to answer the question, why can they not be the church? So why is it that the Antichrist in Revelation verse 13:7, when it says, and it was given to him to, or rather it's speaking of the Antichrist, to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Can Satan or the Antichrist overcome the church? Never. Right? So it's just, so I'm asking that to say, no. Saints cannot represent the church in Revelation 13:7. Why? Because Christ himself said, Satan, the gates of hell shall never prevail against the church, okay, against the saints. And we know that in other verses, right? That, we can say, get thee behind me, Satan, and he shall flee. So wherever in the presence of Satan, we have complete power because we are followers of Jesus Christ, and Satan will flee. So this is saying he can't overcome us. So it has to be that the saints of Revelation 13:7, we already know that it's not the church, because we know that rapture is just one more confirmation that the saints here is not the church of 13:7. It's the saints referred to recent converts, to Israel, converted Israel, to people on the earth during the tribulation. All right. But I wanted to end with that, with this wonderful reassurance from Christ that the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church. Thank God.
Amen.
Okay, so any questions or comments? So If you think of something, just say. So it's so nice to be back in class. I missed you all for these 2 weeks. I'm so happy. Next time will be on Tuesday. And I'm just going to end this here. No, not that one.
From Brazil.
Exactly. So that's,
Oh, yes.
oh, here
You'll
it
be
is.
here very cold.